Hello, and welcome to our third edition of North Penn Answers. This program is brought to you by the North Penn School District to address the community's questions and concerns. My name is Joe Sullivan, and I'm a member of the Board of School Directors. Joining me is Vince Shapinski, School Board President. We've had some great feedback and several questions come to us via email and from conversations we had with the community and from local press. So let's begin. Today's main topic will be the Act 1 Index. There are so many questions surrounding Act 1 and what it means to our community. Vince, can you provide some background on Act 1 for our viewers?
Act 1 is the Taxpayer Relief Act, and it was signed on June 27, 2006. This law allocates a portion of revenues from casino gambling in Pennsylvania to offset the reliance on local property taxes to pay for public school education. Act 1 was designed to be revenue neutral. This means that any gaming revenue received by local school district can only be used to offset existing property tax revenues and not as additions to the district's budget. From a school district perspective, the most important feature of Act 1 is that it establishes a ceiling on board-approved property tax increases. Any proposed increase in property taxes above the percentage based on the state-mandated formula must be approved by the district's voters in a back-end referendum. A back-end referendum is one in which the outcome of the vote applies retroactively to the issue being voted upon.
Thanks, Vince. What was the process for budgeting before the passage of Act 1?
Prior to the passage of Act 1, school boards typically approve preliminary budgets in May, and final budgets were adopted by June 30th. Under Act 1, however, Pennsylvania school districts must either approve their preliminary budgets in December or early January, or else adopt a resolution stating that they'll follow this year's budget will not require a tax increase greater than the allowable index limit determined by the state. This law also allows for something called exceptions. Exceptions were put in place for extraordinary expenses like existing labor contracts, responses to emergencies or disasters declared by our governor, implementation of court orders or administrative orders from federal and state agencies, and responses to conditions that pose an immediate threat or serious harm of injury. It also includes the state retirement contributions and special education costs beyond Act 1 limits. If one or more referendum exceptions are approved by the Pennsylvania Department of Education, a school district may increase the rate of the tax levy for the support of public schools beyond the index without seeking voter approval.
Just to be clear, the North Penn School Board has never applied for these exceptions since the exception of Act 1.
Now, North Penn has never applied for exceptions because we didn't need it.
How is the Act 1 index determined?
The Act 1 ceiling is based on an average of the state average weekly wage and the federal cost index for elementary and secondary schools. For the fiscal year 2011 and 12, the base index is 1.4%. As you can see, the history of Act 1 index from 2006 to 2012 for the North Penn School District.
Act 1 provides an index which a school district cannot exceed. Isn't it also supposed to provide more stable funding through a gaming revenue?
It is. Another important part of the new law is that Act 1 allows school districts to accept state gaming revenue to offset property tax reduction, and which results in homestead and farmstead exclusions. Homestead and farmstead exclusions lower assessments, which result in lower property taxes for qualifying homeowners and farmers. However, state gambling revenues are not guaranteed. Whatever the state takes in from gambling each year goes first to fund property tax and rent rebates for seniors and disabled Pennsylvanians, and then to school districts to offset property tax reductions. Usually school districts find out in May if they will get state gaming funds and how much. For the fiscal year 2011 and 12, North Penn's homestead exemption totaled $184 per household. This means your tax bill was reduced by $184 for the 2011-2012 school year.
So, what is the true impact of Act 1?
One of the impacts of the enactment of Act 1 was the introduction of competition for tax dollars. Competition comes from the fact that Act 1 imposes limits, and these limits mean that there are only so much money available for education. We've all heard the old saying, the pie is only so big. So what this boils down to is that if we want to spend money on something new or to increase a current expenditure, it has to come out of the current resources, which basically means taking money away from one area to put it somewhere else. This also means that increases in non-educational expenses take more and more dollars away from education. That is why the current school board takes a hard line against increasing any spending that doesn't impact the quality of education.
With the economy stuck in low gear, reassessments continue to be challenged, and the funds from the state and federal government seem to be heading in a negative direction. This problem is going to be around for a while and progressively more difficult.
When you look forward, the problem is growing worse with the tough economic times we're in. With the Act 1 index projected for the fiscal school year 2012-13, which will be released sometime in September, to be below 1%, the limited resources available for educating our kids is being threatened by increasing cost. Just as the state and federal governments are cutting funding, discontinuing support for programs, and reducing overall financial support for education, higher costs translate directly into taking more and more of the available tax dollars away from things like curriculum, technology, and textbooks. Parents are waking up to find out that academic programs, extracurricular activities, and the additional things that most people feel make up a good school district and a quality education are now being directly threatened by the Act 1 competition factor. And that is why the current school board is fighting hard to hold the line on increasing cost. We must protect the quality of education we've all come to know and expect from our school.
Next, we wanted to answer a few more questions we have seen in the local media. We received questions about how vacancies are reviewed and assessed. Let's go to Dr. Dietrich, Superintendent of the North Penn School District, to explain to our viewers how the process works and what the district does when a vacancy occurs. Dr. Dietrich?
Thank you, Joe. The school district has a detailed, comprehensive process for the reviewing of each vacancy that presents itself. The process begins with the notification to the HR department that a vacancy has occurred due to such things as retirements, resignations, or transfers. To get started, the HR department collects all the basic information about the position, such as full or part-time status, 12-month or 10-month, date of the vacancy, salary range, work schedule, and job responsibilities for the position. Then we carefully examine the current responsibilities of the vacated position, and we put those responsibilities in order of importance. And we identify the percent of the time involved for each of the key responsibilities. From there, we put together a list of key tasks performed with each of the above responsibilities. We also examine the manner in which key tasks are performed to determine if it's possible to perform these tasks in a more efficient manner. We have found, for example, steps within processes that can be done more efficiently through the use of technology. We're also applying Six Sigma Lean methodology, which has been used successfully in the business world to drive improvement and reduce costs. Then we ask ourselves, what is the role of the vacated position within the district's strategic plan? If the vacated position is important yet not mission critical, because we as an organization are at a different place than we were when the position was created, the position is eliminated. Next, we review the department's resource allocation to assess whether the need for the position exists. For example, if the department has 4 members, we determine if it's possible through realignment of essential job responsibilities to reduce the department to 3 members. If we decide to maintain the position, we summarize the rationale for maintaining current position status, and then we post for filling through transfer or through taking someone from outside of the organization. Regarding transfers, at times we fill positions that are deemed to be absolutely essential with individuals from less essential positions, and then we leave the newly vacated position vacant. This is a summary of the overall process. Naturally, there are nuances which are specific to each position. For example, a vacancy in a secretarial position would have its own unique aspects which would be different from a teaching position. A teaching position might have its own unique aspects as compared to the guidance counselor position. In the case of a teaching position at, for example, the high school, we would look at the availability of other department members to teach a 6th period in place of a study hall assignment. In the case of a guidance counselor, we would look at the caseloads as compared to national standards. We are continuing to evaluate and refine our processes as each vacancy presents itself, since each position and circumstance can be different. North Penn School District is as great as the people who make it up, including staff, students, and community members. During these challenging economic times, our focus has always been on protecting the core mission of the school district, which is educating children. We have also worked to maintain staffing as much as we can but inevitably staffing and its associated costs, the majority of any school district's budget, were bound to be affected. Whether due to attrition or demotion, I take very seriously the impact of eliminating positions on staff, students, and the organization as a whole. In every case, we have worked very hard to move staff around to fill positions that absolutely must be retained. A byproduct of the process is that when you work with less people, everyone gets more and more responsibilities added to their plate. We're doing more work with less people. This is a testament to the dedication and commitment of all our staff, and I thank all of them.
Thanks, Dr. Dietrich. Our last question for today comes from a parent of a middle school student who is also a teacher in the district concerning guidance counselor staffing at Penfield. We had a recent vacancy, and they would like to know how students' level of service is going to change when one of Penfield's counselors is resigning and is not being replaced. First, we appreciate the question and want to stress the importance of everyone participating in these conversations. Penfield's guidance counselor staffing level will be 2.5 counselors, which is within PA state counselors ratio guidelines and has been deemed adequate as a result of the process Dr. Dietrich just discussed to maintaining service levels. Penfield has gone through Alvea's training, which enriched the anti-bullying efforts in the building, as evidenced by the pre- and post-building surveys. Additionally, Penfield will have a contracted counselor from Northwestern 1.5 days per week to conduct group sessions, provide staff development, and see students individually for counseling. Services provided by a behavior specialist, which is the same services that were provided to Penfield last year, and will also have a Northbridge counselor providing support to Penfield, the equivalent of 1 day per week this coming year. We appreciate the questions, and we encourage all members of our community to participate in this dialogue. We also encourage you to visit our website at npenn.org and sign up for our North Penn School District eMatters newsletter that is sent out at the beginning of every month. If you have a question you'd like to see answered on this show, please email northpennanswers@npenn.org. We encourage all members of the community, parents, teachers, students, anyone who wants North Penn to continue to be one of the top school districts in Pennsylvania, to send in your questions. On our next program, we will continue to answer your questions, and we will also be joined by North Penn School Board member Josie Sharnock, who will update us on North Penn student achievement. Until next time, I'm Joe Sullivan, and thanks for watching.